I think the NIST standards which you refer to, perhaps we can go through some of these. I know you take a very scientific approach and data-driven approach to security. So how does an organization go about systematically developing prevention, detection, and response patterns for their security requirements?
Yeah, so for the security requirements, I mean, one study one angle that we took a number of years ago was to use a natural language processing algorithm to read the functional requirements of a product and to match them up with the security controls in the NIST 853 standard. And so it would look for keywords in the functional requirements and then match them to the patterns and then suggest security requirements. For example, a requirement might be a doctor edits the patient record. And from that natural language requirement, which is functional, it's functionality that the product should have, this would say, okay, if the doctor's going to edit a patient record, the doctor must be authenticated, the transaction must be logged. So it'll tell the development team the associated security requirements based upon that functional requirement. So that's one way, but I really do think increasingly organizations are providing pretty extensive taxonomies of security controls, which security requirements, that's what they often use as security controls that companies can use and to be kind of exhaustive as they're trying to be proactive in the prevent, detect, response. So response says, oh my gosh, we got attacked, what should we do? That's not that great. Detect is there are vulnerabilities in there, how do we get them out before someone else finds them? And best case is when they're preventative. And
so are there some blueprints to get companies started?
Are there blueprints? Well, the NIST cybersecurity framework is a good way to get companies started. I guess some of the ways I would say a blueprint. So that's a risk-based model, and so not all companies, they're starting from different places. And they also have different risks. So depending upon the product itself and the product that the company is producing, they, would consider themselves higher or lower risk. The NIST cybersecurity framework does a little bit of that risk assessment. It's not that specific though, but it is good for getting a company started. I'd say another couple ways to get started. So I mentioned the BSIM, the Building Security and Maturity Model. So it's a taxonomy of 125 practices. And the maturity model says there's level 1 practices, level 2 practices, level 3 practices. And so the level 1, so with the level 1, so I'll tell you a competing way to look at it in a moment, but level 1 practices would be, these are the practices most organizations do. And then level 2 is, and more advanced companies, level 3 is the most advanced. So if you're just starting out, looking at the level 1 practices of the BSIM is a good start. There is another, so they had the similar origins, but there's another taxonomy called SAM or Open SAM, which comes out of the OWASP organization. And they have level 1, 2, and 3 as well. And the MM is maturity model as well. But they have a different tact, and what they're saying is more like it's prescriptive. Like you should do level 1, and then you should do level 2, and then you should do level 3, and you should develop a procedure to get yourself to level 2 and then to level 3. So you should set your goals to increase the maturity. So similar, but similar, something like 125 practices and a way to advance through it. So that means companies don't have to start from scratch. They can go and look at the types of things that are in these maturity models and start to say, okay, we should adopt these things. And they're also pretty wide varying from developer practices, management practices, training practices, compliance practices, governance practices. They're all in there. So those are good ways.